Welcome to the Sober Podcast, part of the Soberverse and created by the team at the Sober Network. The Sober Network is engaged in revolutionizing the treatment industry by creating its own token economy. We are continually proving that technology, along with incentivized human accountability, provides measurable and positive outcomes. Visit us at sobernetwork.com.
Welcome to the Sober Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Brickhouse, and we'd like to take a minute to get the word out about one of our sister companies, Sober Life Apparel, where positivity and pride pave the way to a brighter, healthier future. Go to SOBRLIFE, that's right, we leave off the E in sober. That's SOBRLIFE.com and check out our new store. Our Sober Celebrity guest today is Don Kelly. I am exceptionally excited to have Don on the show because I have known Don since I was a little boy in Beaumont, Texas. He was friends with my parents, and he constitutes two firsts for me. He was the first out gay man that I knew, and then later the first gay sober man that I knew. And Don started his journey in sobriety May 30th, 1982. So he has 41 years of sobriety, and he's probably our first guest to have that long of a sober track. He is a retired executive director of the Southeast Texas Planning Commission and has made a tremendous impact for the LGBTQ plus community with his collection of rare documents helping others understand the history of gay people. The Don Kelly Research Collection of Gay Literature and Culture was acquired by Texas A&M University in 2015. Welcome to Sober Podcast, Don. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Welcome to you. And yes, I've known you a long time. My first introduction, you were playing in Oliver. You were the star of the show. And if I remember correctly, I might have been sitting next to your father, who was so proud of you up on the stage.
I think
and now he's gone to New York and kept the credits rolling and doing some wonderful work.
Oh, thanks, Don. And you have done some amazing work, both before and after sobriety. And the sober community has made tremendous leaps since you got sober. What was it like getting sober in 1982 in Texas?
Well, it was in Beaumont, Texas. I didn't know much about alcoholism because I grew up in an Irish Catholic family in Chicago, and we frankly never heard the word. I never heard the word alcoholic. It was always he's too drunk or he just can't hold his liquor, that kind of a thing. And until I saw the wonderful movie The Lost Weekend with Ray Milland, I said, well, that's probably what I am. But anyway, there are wonderful treatment programs in Beaumont of all types, but I just went to a 12-step program and just went to 2 or 3 meetings a day and did it that way. I was a binge drinker, so and played a lot of sports, drinking heavily, so I was not the same circumstances as someone that drank heavily every day.
Right.
But when I did drink, I blacked out. It was certainly alcoholic, and I was alcoholic from a teenager.
As a gay man, did you go through different obstacles when you first got sober? I mean, was that ever a problem?
Well, the obstacle was you feel like you're different going to the meeting because you go to a meeting and most of the people are straight people. Most of the people are people that you know with in that small town, professionally or from a business standpoint. So it's you're a little hesitant about talking about one's sexual life or giving any sexual identification. Mm-hmm. I was openly gay. I did it, but talking about it as a share in a meeting is something else. On this, there are a number of people would use the queer word many times, and I remember one meeting I got up and I... which was queer, by the way. Queer this or queer that. And I said, I happen to be a gay man, and I'm also sitting next to a man that has a gay son who is HIV positive. and because you just just watch your language. As it turned out, the gentleman responded and actually apologized and made amends to me following the meeting.
Wow, that's great. That's sobriety in practice, and of course you said queer, and of course in those days queer was derogatory, and now
very much, very derogatory.
Right,
derogatory.
Right, and now of course it's a term we took control of and embrace. And I wanted to discuss. Well, first of all, we on this show often have topic-based interviews, and given your background, I thought a great topic for you is being of service to others in sobriety, and in your professional life, and then after you retired, you have had a series of jobs in which they were volunteer and service oriented. And how did sobriety affect that part of you, of giving back to others?
Frankly, when I was working, the addiction sort of burned me out professionally. But once I got sober, it was a whole new renewal in this. So sobriety affected me greatly. It was sort of like being young again and having bright horizons and just renewing oneself from a professional standpoint. I'm totally devoted to service. That's been my whole life. I was a public servant, as you've mentioned, for my entire career. And the 12-step program, putting a premium on service, just was made to order for me. And the spare time that I have these days, I could be doing a lot of things. I could be a docent at a museum here. We have a wonderful Museum of Fine Arts. I could be an usher in a theater and sit down and see a free play. I could work in a wonderful medical center here in Houston. But at 83, I know there's not much time in the not much sand in the hourglass on the upper floor. I find that I can make my biggest difference. It's life or death in getting sober with people. So I feel very fulfilled in doing that. And I spend 7 days a week doing it, and it doesn't tire me out. And I don't think it's a one-dimensional thing. It's just something I really enjoy. I've seen miracles happen. I've seen a lot of people die as well. But I've seen so much good about it. It's a very fulfilling time of my life. In fact, I've lived a blessed life, and this is really the best years of my life. And I'm fortunate because of getting sober 41 years ago. I've put a premium on good health and exercise and good diet and that kind of thing. So I'm pretty mobile and at 83 without any major health issues.
That's great. And I want to discuss your background and contribution to the LGBTQ plus community. When did you, and specifically the what I mentioned earlier in the interview, the Don Kelly Research Collection of Gay Literature and Culture that Texas A&M University acquired in 2015, when did you start collecting rare documents pertaining to the gay community, and why?
Well, I've always had an interest in gay literature, and I had a personal collection that was great. And in retirement, I just one thing led to another, and had a wonderful personal collection. Then I realized I had so much, and I had spent so much money on it. I needed to donate it or get some revenue from it. And I put an ad in the gay Harvard Gay and Lesbian Review, a full-page ad.
Yeah.
There wasn't any responses from that, but I did get a call from the University of Texas. They have a wonderful archive there, and they said they were interested in some of the material, but not all of it. I'm enough of a collector to know that when you dispose of a collection, it's dispose of it all rather than cherry pick it.
Right.
So A&M universities are ranked on how gay-friendly they are, and A&M is a world-class university, but it was 99th out of the 100 top universities as far as being gay-friendly goes. And gay-friendly is a big factor in rating universities. So they initially bought some of the collection. I gave whatever money back to them, and given over $1 million of my own personal funds to enhance the collection. It's one of the it has one of the greatest breadth of material of any collection, and it's got zines and comics, and it even has a lot of homophobia literature, which is unusual because I wanted to show how terrible gay people were treated, particularly the years I was growing up, in the 50s and the 60s. There was some very vile literature that was published at that time.
Yeah, no, I think that's important to that's it's kind of like in sobriety when you do an inventory and you've got to look at the good and the bad, and I think you're right in including that in the collection. And you know what, Don, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Everyone stick with us. We'll be back in a few seconds.
Hi everyone, Nate Kelly here, producer of the Sober Podcast. Head over to soberpodcast.com for more information on the show and for a library of all of our past episodes with your favorite sober celebrities. All of our episodes are available in both video and audio format, and you can also register as a guest and apply to be featured on the podcast. Thank you so much for downloading today's episode and for continuing to support both the Sober Podcast and our Sober Network. Jamie, back to you.
Let's get back to our guest, not our desk, but I am at my desk. We are talking to Don Kelly. And Don, does your involvement with the LGBTQ plus community coincide with your sobriety, would you say, in any way?
Oh, very much. In Beaumont, when I was getting sober and everything, I was on the founding board of the our AIDS organization there called the Triangle AIDS Network.
I know of it very well.
We brought in speakers from Houston. I had a lot of gay men that were kind enough to come over and talk on their respective fields of knowledge, whether it's social work or on literature on this. And yes, I've always been an activist. I've always been open about my sexuality, even when I was working in a fairly conservative part of the country. But people were good to me because I was open, and they trusted me for my honesty.
I think that's amazing because, and I touted you for One Gay Pride on one of my TikTok videos as one of my personal gay heroes because, as I said at the beginning of this, you were the first out gay man that I knew, but also let's just talk about the fact that it was in Beaumont, Texas in the 1970s, which was a conservative town, and it was also the 1970s when most people were not out publicly. So I really think you're a pioneer in that regard, and I applaud you for that. So.
Well, thank you. And I did see your wonderful TikTok feature, and I was very proud of that. And I feel the same way about you. We pass the torch on to the next generation, and you've picked that torch up and done exceptionally well in the arts and other types of service, including this one.
Yeah, thank you. And how has, so you've got 41 years of sobriety. How has it changed over the years, and how has being a person who is of service to others and believes in giving back, how has that kept you sober?
Well, it's given me more compassion in my life, there's some people that are very difficult that come into recovery, and it gives me more patience with them and more compassion for them because I can feel the suffering for that. I think that's also a natural tendency as you grow older on that. You should have more compassion for people that are struggling on this. But compassion is a big thing with me. We're taught to be loving and tolerant, and to me, that's the best definition of compassion.
Yeah, that's a great definition.
It's a spiritual journey. It's not only the physical journey of getting people sober. There's a big spiritual aspect to that, and that gives me great comfort.
And over all these years, were you ever? Did you ever come close to relapsing?
I'm sorry, Jamie, I missed.
I said, since you've been sober, have you ever come close to relapsing?
No. I did have an initial relapse before my 41 years, which lasted a 3-year period. And that just took me down, and I was got a DWI, and it was embarrassing because I was working. My work took me with the state legislature here, and I was working with the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which were making more severe legislation, more consequential for people that were found guilty of that.
Right.
And when I got the DWI, I says, what a hypocrite I am working with these mothers that may have had a spouse or a son or a relative or a friend killed in a drunk driving accident, and here I have one myself, and that was one of the strongest. Got my attention that I many times I thought I was a functional alcoholic, doing a good job, getting things done, but I was able to step in and out of it. I did not look at alcoholism as a disease, and it is a disease, and you just can't rationalize yourself out of that.
Well said. You and some of the material you sent us, you brought up the topic of aging in sobriety. Would you say you've struggled with getting older in sobriety, or how have you dealt with aging?
Not at all. It's the best years of my life. Older people in sobriety are more or less venerated to some extent for a number of reasons, not only for their term of sobriety, but also for the wisdom they have on this. And I've found a great validation of my life and of my age staying in active recovery programs on that. So, and that has not bothered me one whit at all.
That's great. I'm gonna remember this as I age, because I would love to age with that outlook. What is the best lesson? And this is a final question we ask all of our guests. What is the best lesson you've learned in sobriety, and how did it help you?
Well, the best lesson is the most important thing in life is to love. And in sobriety, you not only love other people, but you also have to love yourself. And so the best lesson is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. And for a person not to have found some love in their life, they're really not living life. I hope everybody, and you will in recovery, find love, and you will be able to accept love from others in order to stay sober. So love is the answer. Woody Allen's one of his famous phrases said, "Love is the answer, but along the way, sex asks him a lot of interesting questions." But love is the answer.
Love is the answer, and that's a great way to end this interview. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Jamie. Your good work. We're all proud of you. Your mom and dad be proud of you.
Thank you.
Keep carrying the message.
Thank you. Stick with us for a second. To all our listeners, thank you for your continued support. Visit us on soberpodcast.com and all places where you find major podcasts to leave us a review and sign up for our mailing list. You will also find the contact information in the show notes for our guest, Don Kelly. I'm your host, Jamie Brickhouse. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook every day, where I tell a true story in high heels. Signing out from the Sober Podcast. Tune in for another show next week.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Sober Podcast. We hope that you have found this episode helpful and look forward to you joining us next time. As we continue to grow and implement positive change, We hope that you'll share our podcast with your friends and loved ones. They can find us on all the major podcast directories or at soberpodcast.com. If you have an idea for the show, want to leave positive feedback, ideas, or comments, connect with us at soberpodcast.com. You can also reach out to us on our social media platforms in the Soberverse. We'd love to hear from you. A special thanks to all those who make this show happen. Jamie Brickhouse, our host, Chrissy Senopol, our social media manager, our sponsor, Dr. J and the Sober Network, and me, I'm your executive producer, Nate Kelly. Join us next Saturday for another story of hope and resilience with a notable sober-lebrity. And until then, remember that we here at the Sober Network are driven by our mission to help people get sober and stay sober. Bye for now.